Okay, well, good morning and welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Again, very happy to have Dr. Kirk Parsley on.
Wait a minute. Morning. One of us is confused.
Man, you guys put me through some effort, but this one's pretty good. I got up at 6 o'clock to get up for this podcast. So good evening to you, Kirk.
Yeah. Good morning to you, Damien.
Hey, man, it's great to have you on. I had a great time last time. We speak the same language, which was awesome. And I just wanted to get you on today to talk about hormones, to talk about the importance of them. Hormones seem to be so confusing for people, and I don't think they are. But then again, we've got the difference between male and female, and that can get complicated. But
yep.
For the people who are just tuning in for the first time that don't know your background, and hopefully I don't butcher it too much, you know, you're a SEAL, you're a Special Forces operator for many years. You left the SEAL community, became a doctor, and then went back into the SEALs. How long have you been a doctor for, Kirk?
I graduated medical school in 2004, so 16 years.
Time goes quick for us old boys.
It really feels like, it feels like 5 years, honestly. If you told me it's 5 years ago, I'd be, yeah, seems about right. But life keeps going faster as you get older, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So 16 years as a doc. With the SEALs, you're so lucky to be in such an interesting community of people, and I'm guessing that's where you learned your trade of hormone work and all the other things you do. I'd like to start off perhaps what you saw in the SEALs. I mean, they're hard-charging warriors. What you saw in them that wasn't quite right, and what you tried to do to help it, and then maybe we can, after we talk about what you saw, maybe we can talk about how hormones work and how humans work with that. Yeah,
sure. So, the really interesting thing was, when I was young when I was a SEAL. Like I got out of the SEAL teams right before my 25th birthday, and started college. So my only experience with doctors when I was in the SEAL teams was, orthopedic injuries, essentially, right? So what everybody had. And so when I was going back to medical school, figuring out, when I decided I was going to go to the military's medical school, banking on going back to the SEAL teams as their physician, that's just kind of what I figured. Like that was my vision, it was orthopedic sports medicine. That's what I was going to see. And then, very long convoluted story. We ended up right when I got there building this amazing sports medicine complex, which then made me the dumbest guy around. And so, because we had these specialists from everywhere, all over the world, were like our guys, and so I was managing the center at that point. And the guys would come in my office and tell me their real problems. They're just, I think we probably talked about this last time. They're just like professional athletes, and that the worst thing you can do is put them on the bench. The worst thing you can do is take them out of their jobs. So they aren't going to give you any opportunity to do that. They're going to come in and tell you everything's great. Like everything's fine. I feel perfect. I feel good. And that's when they're forced to come see you. Otherwise they're not going to come see you at all. But, either fortunately or unfortunately for me, I'd been a SEAL, and they were all having problems, and they trusted me to not disqualify them. They trusted me to work with them and help them out. And so that's what I did. And to be honest, like, this was 2009 when I started there. So I'd only been out of medical school 5 years. And, what I knew a lot about was sports medicine and orthopedics and, dive medicine, like the hyperbaric stuff. But, these guys were coming to me. I'd been to a Western medical school where they trained me to recognize and diagnose and treat disease. And none of these guys had disease. They just weren't performing at the level that they felt like they should be performing at, where they wanted to be performing. And I had no idea at all. So I'm like, let's just order every damn lab under the sun. And I just did this huge panel, and I would, really, to be 100% honest, I had no idea what I was looking for. Just like, let's just test, because the story was so similar. It happened, like every guy who came in my office essentially told me the same story. And I'm like, all right, well, there's got to be some trend. Since there's a trend to the story, surely there's going to be a trend to the labs. And there was, all right. So these guys came in, and, they basically looked like, if I would have shown their labs to one of my colleagues, and I said, tell me who you think this patient is, right? What do they look like? And they're like, yeah, it's a 50, 60-year-old, overweight, man who hasn't really taken care of himself for most of his life. And that's, sort of not necessarily metabolic syndrome, but kind of playing around with the looks of metabolic syndrome. And so, they were coming back with really low testosterone levels. Now, technically they were still within the normal limits. The better term for that is reference range. And we can go into why that's completely insignificant if we want to talk about that later. But they were coming in with really low testosterone levels, really high estrogen levels, really low IGF-1, which is the marker for growth hormone, really high HSCRP, which means they had a lot of inflammation going, high fasting insulin levels, meaning they had poor insulin sensitivity, fairly high HbA1cs, showing that was a trend. It wasn't just like an anomaly, that they really were running around with sort of high blood glucose and high insulin levels, high oxidative markers, usually really poor thyroid function. Let's say DHEA was usually completely in the toilet. 24-hour cortisol catches were usually about 25% of what you would have expected for these guys. And then, just all their lipidology, which I don't put a whole lot of stock in, and I don't consider myself a lipidologist or an expert in that realm, but, their lipidology did not look good. If you ascribe to that disease model, they were looking bad in that area as well. And then what they were complaining, what was bringing them into my office was, really, like I said, just performance stuff. And a lot of it was subjective. It was, they felt really moody. They didn't feel like, they couldn't regulate their mood well. They were really snappish with their kids and their wives, and, cranky and angry at work and with their coworkers, felt down and sort of depressed quite frequently, felt really emotional and sad sometimes for no apparent reason. Felt like their working memory just sucked. They couldn't remember why they walked into a room. They couldn't just like pack up their backpack and get in their car and drive to work. It took them like 5 trips to they'd pack up their backpack, get in their car, start pulling down the driveway and go, oh man, I forgot my wallet. And they go back in and get their wallet, and they get back in their car, start to leave again. And go, oh crap, I forgot my ID. And then they go back in there, and then maybe drive down the street. They go, oh man, I forgot this. And then they go back. And this was like an everyday thing. I mean, an everyday thing, if you can imagine how frustrating that was. And then, something they complained about was motivation, which, as you can imagine, they're SEALs. They're still doing their job. They're still working. They're still working their butts off and doing really hard work and grinding through it. They're not, they're doing it, but they're doing it 100% with their mind, right? Their motivation just wasn't there. And they just simply weren't enjoying their lives, and they weren't performing at the levels that they felt like they should be performing with, because they were working with nutrition experts to dial that in. They were working with, we had strength and conditioning coaches and exercise physiologists, and these guys had the best support in the world to be healthy and to be great performers. And they just felt like there was something wrong with them, that they just couldn't get there. They just couldn't capitalize on all that good information, even though they were doing what they felt like they should do. and they were doing what was being prescribed for them to do, but they just weren't feeling the way they felt like they should, and they weren't performing the way they felt like they should. And to be fair, like we know that they're still performing at a very high level relative to anybody you want to compare them to, but for them, their individual perception was they weren't performing as well as they should. And
this was common across all those guys. And what I'm hearing you say, they've got their nutrition dialed in by experts. They're exercising beautifully, and that's not cutting it. Not only,
right.
I mean, as we know with special forces guys, it is that mental toughness that gets you through.
Yep.
They're surviving on that, but that's it. I mean, that list of symptoms that you spoke about, that's just unhappiness right there and then, and that's not what we expect a peak athlete as they are to perform at. So nutrition and exercise didn't get them right. You're running,
and we also had these guys meditating and using heart math, and like a lot of, like we were, and these guys were covered by experts. Like we had, we had the top dogs all over the world advising them on, autonomic balancing and everything. So as far as they knew, they were doing everything perfectly.
Yeah.
Their labs were not supporting that. And then, as you know, I mean, we've talked about it before. The spoiler alert was that a lot of it was their sleep. The poor quality of sleep, their chaotic sleep, and then the use of sleep drugs. So
that's exactly where I wanted to go. But you just touched on a couple of things there. They're doing everything they can head-wise and things, meditation, as you're saying. But the main point you touched on there was their labs showed one picture, which in isolation is relatively poor, but their symptoms correlated exactly with those labs.
Right.
That doesn't lie. They are what they are. Let's transition, because that is literally the next question that I asked before. Right. Well, let's talk about hormones, and then let's.
And the important thing. Hold on to your thought. I just don't want to leave this out. The important thing was the labs and their symptoms correlated perfectly. Yeah. As much as you can, ascribe causation to labs, but they correlated very well. But the person sitting in front of me did not look like he had those symptoms, and he did not look like those would have been his labs.
No,
right?
exactly.
They looked robustly healthy. They were lean. They were jacked. They seemed very attentive. They were in the game. So that's where the discordance was. Like, what they're telling me, what I'm seeing in their labs, but what I'm seeing in front of me does not match at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. I'm sorry, I did miss that part as well. You're looking at how the person presents, what their symptoms are, and what their labs are, and exactly. These guys, the top warriors, the top athletes, performers, and you talk about insulin sensitivity. Anybody that's listening, someone that's insulin resistant, they're expected to be pre-diabetic, overweight, and these guys are lean and mean.
Right. And and honestly, like I had no idea that sleep impacted insulin sensitivity. I mean, I don't think there were probably a handful of researchers in the world that knew that at the time. That was not common knowledge. I think a lot of people know that now. Sleep's kind of become a big deal since I started doing all this. And I'm not saying I started it. I'm just saying, like, during that time, over the last 10 years, people have really caught on to a lot of that. And, I mean, your insulin sensitivity and certain tissues drops by 30% with a single night of bad sleep. I mean, you just lose 2 hours of sleep and you have a 30% decrease in insulin sensitivity. So if you're pre-diabetic, you're waking up diabetic. And if you're normal, you're waking up essentially pre-diabetic. And then you're going to have the energy levels and the performance commensurate with that physiologic state. You're going to perform like somebody who's a pre-diabetic because you are, that day you are, at least.
I love you brought that up, because I was speaking to a nutritionist and then I was speaking to a dietitian, and these people are far more credentialed than I am. I'm just a former operator and a few smart people, and they didn't know that 24 hours has it. If you sleep 5 hours less in one night, your insulin resistance for the next 24 hours. That just breaks their paradigm, breaks their brain, because if they saw bloods or they saw the person, and they go, oh, you're diabetic, and it was actually because they just had a poor night's sleep. So yeah,
Right.
changes things.
Yeah. And the same thing with, same thing with exercise physiologists and strength and conditioning coaches that are really savvy. They if the guy's turning in his journal, like, this food log and his training journal, his training logs, telling you what they've been doing, and, giving the whatever stress score or assessment you're using, you'd be like, hey man, this guy's dialed in. He's ready to rock. We should see some great gains. And then these guys just don't gain at all. In fact, they're working a lot of times, the coaches would tell me, it's like, these guys work harder than anybody I've ever seen, and they're getting worse, I mean, not drastically, but they're backsliding a little bit. And they just couldn't figure it out. They're like, well, how are we overtraining these guys who've proven themselves to be very, very resistant to overtraining, right? Very resilient. I mean, you think about going through SEAL training, you're running like 10 miles a day for 6 months. I mean, not many people who are runners could do that, much less guys that, that aren't necessarily runners. They're just like dudes who want to do cool stuff. And a lot of bigger guys like me running 10 miles a day, that should destroy you, right? I mean, that should destroy most people. If you run, you just kind of get thrown in, and obviously that's not the only thing you're doing. That's, that's just part of your day. That's maybe, 25% of your activity for the day, and you're running 10 miles every single day on average, Hey.
And we're back. Thank you. I just did a quick pause there with a bit dropout. So yeah, man, I know exactly what you're saying about this field. These guys, they're so mentally tough. Let's transition to, so we've got that in a pigeonhole. Let's transition to what hormones are, what they do, and then layer that on top of how you got these guys from such a bad place of symptoms and such a bad place of their lab markers, their blood markers, and then performing so much better. So, I mean, I haven't asked anybody this on the podcast before. I'd like you to try and lay out hormones and basics of, what the hell they do, and in layman's terms. Let's maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not going to. I shouldn't even ask the questions. I'm just going to leave it to the expert.
Yeah. So, honestly, when you get down to just like defining a hormone is kind of tricky business. Because you can define them by their structure, by their chemical structure, but you can define them by how they function as well. And then there's some overlap, and then there's some features where it doesn't match. But, for just layman, for layman's terms, we'll just go with sort of like the big hormones everybody knows about, things like testosterone and dihydrotestosterone and estrogen and insulin.
Okay, we're back. We just dropped out on insulin there, Kirk.
Yeah, is that on your end or my end?
It's definitely not my end, my friend.
Let me see what's going on, because I'm not even on wireless. I'm hardwired in. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm I'm downloading and uploading at about 100, which is 10% of what I usually have, but it should still be fast enough. But all right, so we'll just roll and keep going. Yeah, so I think it's I think it's easiest just to talk about hormones sort of as a group, because essentially, so all right, so I'll say this. So if you think about your DNA, everybody knows that, you know, they have genetics that leads to them being a human being and certain features in them and all this. What not as many people know is there's like a protein sleeve that covers those genetics, and depending on how that protein sleeve gets bent and opened and stretched, and the shape of that depends on which genes will be translated, or which genes are sort of operating within that cell, is the way to think about that. And that's what we call epigenetics. Well, hormones control epigenetics to a huge degree, because what a hormone actually does is it goes into the nucleus of the cell and it affects which genes are being used. So a hormone can go into a cell and it makes a cell do more anabolic things or more catabolic things. And I'll define those super simplistically. If you think about anabolic hormones, bodybuilders, Arnold Schwarzenegger, bigger muscles, because he's taking anabolic hormones, right? So anabolic means that we're taking lots of small things like what you're eating, and we're making them into big things like muscles, right? So we're taking small things, small, simple things into big, complex things. That's anabolic. Catabolic is exactly the opposite. We're using complex structures and breaking them down into small particles because we need those small particles to do something else. And so basically, if you think about the fight or flight system, right, the sympathetic nervous system, and that's the part of your body that it's the part of your brain that reacts to your environment and causes stress, right? It causes a stress response. And then the higher the stress response, when you get to sort of a maximal level of the stress response, you're in what we call fight or flight, meaning like you're dumping 100% of your stress hormones into the situation, because your survival depends upon it, right? There's something that's threatening your life or your well-being enough to where it's synonymous with your life. And so only that threat matters. And so your body goes into like this superhuman physiological state where you're faster and you're stronger and your reflexes are better and your pain threshold is higher and your pupils are dilated. You have a broader field of vision. Like you have more endurance, you have faster reflexes, like everything is better, right? Your lungs are expanded, you're taking in more oxygen, blood pressure's up, heart rate's up, and you're ready to go to get away from that threat. And what most people don't know is that that's actually a catabolic state. And that's why we don't run around like that all the time, because it would be great. You know, like, why aren't we just always that strong and resilient and enduring? And like, why wouldn't we want that all the time? Well, because we've shifted our fuel source. Essentially, we have now switched everything to where we are actually using our cells as the fuel source to get away. And we're shutting down all of these things that are going to lead to our long-term survival, right? So if you think about, you're being pursued by like a big predator, or modern days, let's say somebody's shooting at you with a gun. All that matters is getting away from that guy with the gun, not getting hit by a bullet, right? It doesn't matter if you can remember your phone number. It doesn't matter if you can reproduce. It doesn't matter if you can digest the food that's in your stomach. It doesn't matter if you can fight off an infection. It doesn't matter if you can repair your sprained ankle. None of that matters. Like, you just have to get away from the bullet first. Get away from the bullet. And then once everything settles down, some of those functions start coming back. So that's a maximal catabolic state. Now, the exact opposite of fight or flight is deep sleep. And when I say deep sleep, I'm talking about slow wave sleep, which is stages 3 and 4. That gets super complex, but for now, we're just going to call deep sleep and REM sleep. Is a simplistic way of thinking about it. So when you're in deep sleep, that's when you're the most anabolic you're ever going to be. So you think about the exact opposite. Your body's essentially useless, right? It's laying there. It's not doing anything. You're not responding to your environment at all. Your heart rate is really low. Your blood pressure is really low. Your stress hormones are the lowest they're going to be at any time of your life. But your anabolic hormones are coming on during that period. And your anabolic hormones are coming in, and essentially what they're doing is they're repairing your body and your brain. And by repair, I mean fixing damage, but I also mean just more correctly structuring whatever needs to be restructured to make you better at whatever you're trying to be better at. And use your brain and your body essentially use today as the template for what you need to be able to do tomorrow. And so the whole goal of going to sleep every night is to repair and restructure everything so that when you wake up tomorrow, you're a better version of who you were today, and you're better able to handle whatever you're going to do tomorrow. So as an example, you want to get stronger, as I'm sure probably all of your listeners know, you go into a gym where you do whatever your strength activity is, but will be simple to say you go into a gym, you lift a bunch of weights, you lift more weights than you're capable of lifting, right? So you go to failure. When you go to failure, you're actually damaging your muscle tissues. That's what failure means. You're trying as hard as you can to contract, and they aren't contracting, they're actually going apart, right? They're eccentrically spreading, and you're trying to contract them. That's a failure. And what you're doing is you're actually ripping muscle fibers. You're ripping muscle cells open. And that's why if you do too much of that, you can get rhabdomyolysis, because you're dumping all of those, all what's inside of your muscle cells, you're dumping that into your bloodstream. And that's, and the byproduct of just the exercise itself is lactic acid. And like all that stuff is what makes us sore. Now, if you think about that logically, why would that make you stronger? It doesn't make you stronger. It makes you weaker. You just damaged a bunch of your tissue, right? Why would you be stronger? Well, you get stronger because you go to sleep and your body and your brain are like, hey man, we know that this dude tomorrow is going to go to try to do this and we couldn't do this today. So let's rebuild all that even better. So we're going to make that muscle fiber, we're going to make it stronger. We're going to make it more likely to be able to withstand that stress. And you can do the same thing with endurance or whatever, but you can also do the same thing with your brain. So if you're training your brain to do something completely novel and it's using up a ton of energy and you're building up a ton of waste products and you got neurons firing like crazy all over the place and you're confused and, it's just as exhausting as any type of physical training. And then you go to sleep that night. And again, your brain and your body are using the template of what happened today as to what we need to be better at tomorrow. So let's fix all of this and make this better. We're going to make this more durable. We're going to make this stronger. We're going to make this connection better. We're going to get rid of some of these wasteful connections. We're going to put more energy in these cells, take some energy out of those cells. And then tomorrow we're going to be a better version of us today. Now, when you're a kid, this works perfectly. Right? Like, and you see kids grow physically, you see them grow emotionally, cognitively, you witness this, they're getting better every day. That's youth. The definition of old is when you can no longer keep up. Right? So you're doing whatever you're doing, trying to get better. Like, I want to be a better me tomorrow. I want to be able to lift more weights, or I want to know some kind of material. Like, I want to be better tomorrow than I am today. So I'm going to really push myself today to be better tomorrow. Well, that depends upon me getting good quality sleep and everything repairing. And that takes a ton of anabolic hormones and almost no stress hormones, which are catabolic hormones. And that allows me to reshape my brain and repair my muscles and put fuel back into my cells, be able to store glycogen back in my cells for energy, to balance my nervous system so that I'm firing the appropriate number of muscles in the right order and all this other stuff for that type of things, to get waste products out of my brain, to solidify and make certain pathways in my brain easier for me to access for the types of things that I'm trying to get better at. All of that's anabolic activity, right? And 100% of that is based on hormones. Now, if you don't sleep well, tomorrow still comes and you didn't repair, right? So let's say, the contract that you were born into, you didn't have to agree to it. The contract you were born into is that it takes 8 hours essentially to recover from being awake for 16 hours. That's it. That's the way we're designed. Every animal is designed their own way, and that's our design. So let's say instead of doing 8 hours, you sleep 6 hours. All right, well, you've taken away 25% of your sleep. It's a safe assumption that you've taken away 25% of your anabolic activity. So now are you waking up better tomorrow? No, you're not even waking up as good as you were today, because you've damaged yourself, or you've stressed yourself, you stressed your body, you stressed your brain in a way to make it better, but then you didn't give it time to repair, or the hormones weren't there to allow it to repair. And then you get up the next day and you do the same thing again, and you try to get better again, and you try to get better again. Now you're running off of sheer grit and willpower, determination. This is what the SEALs are doing. Just like put your head down and run harder. Like it's eventually going to work, keep punching that brick wall. You're going to break through it one day. And the thing that most people don't consider is when you wake up the next day, you're in a deficit, right? You needed 8 hours. You only spent 6. You shorted yourself 2 hours. You still have to do tomorrow. You still have to do all of tomorrow. You don't get to, you don't get to wave off and cancel part of tomorrow. So where are you going to get that? Where do you get the sources? Where do you get the fuel from? Like, where do you get the resources? You get it from stress hormones. You raise your stress hormones and you become catabolic, just like you're going towards fight or flight. You start using your muscles as a source of amino acids. You start using your stored glycogen. You start using all of your resources to allow your body to get through today when it's not essentially ready for today because you didn't get enough sleep. And so when you first go into sleep, your first part of your sleep cycle, when you get into bed, stage 1 is like that hazy, I'm almost asleep kind of thing. I'm kind of aware of what's going on. Go down into stage 2. Stage 2 is transitional. Like I'm getting into sleep proper. All this really happening is my brain and my body they're ceasing to pay attention to my environment, right? My eyes still work, my ears still work, my nose, everything still works. Just my body and brain are ceasing to pay any more attention to anything, right? And I'm going off into this, and I drift down into deep sleep. And my deep sleep cycle, just like I said, one of the first thing it does, you shrink these glial cells in your brain down. It creates these little pathways so you can flush out all these toxins in your brain. Your growth hormone starts shooting up. Your testosterone starts shooting up. That testosterone is getting converted to DHT, which is the most anabolic hormone. Your DHEA levels are going up, even though those are part of your adrenals, which is a stress organ, but it's 3 layers, and they can secrete at different. They can secrete individually. So you aren't actually secreting stress hormones. You're just secreting precursors. Your cholesterol is becoming DHEA. Your DHEA is, could be, okay, your cholesterol is becoming DHEA and or pregnenolone, and then your DHEA is going on to become testosterone, and then dihydrotestosterone, and then estrogen and or estrogen, right? Your growth hormone is leading to something being produced in your liver called IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor. Your insulin sensitivity is going up really high. Your insulin load itself is actually going down because your sensitivity is going up. And you have this really anabolic hormone entering your cells, going into the nucleus of the cell and saying, hey, do anabolic stuff, which means basically if you think of a cell as like every cell in your body is its own little factory, the hormone is going to the foreman's office and saying, hey, this is what I want everyone in your factory to do today. And that could be, we're going to build a bunch of stuff. Or it could be like, we're going to tear down a bunch of stuff because we need all the parts, right? And so that would be catabolic versus anabolic. So if you think of this, so basically almost every hormone that you hear about when you hear things called hormones, you're thinking of estrogen, there are 3 different estrogens: estriol, estradiol, estrone, and then you have testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, and you have insulin, you have thyroid. People, like, these are the things that most people think about when they think of hormones. All of these things are essential. Every single one of those things are or can be anabolic, and essentially for our purposes, we'll call all of those anabolic. The stress hormone of cortisol, that is catabolic, and it secretes some neuropeptides that essentially, this is why I was saying earlier, it's hard to define, but these neuropeptides, they're neuropeptides when they get in your brain. Otherwise, they're They're just peptides that are floating around. So adrenaline, essentially, right? Epinephrine and norepinephrine. And those are essentially hormones. Those are behaving like hormones too. And so they're dictating what's going on with your body and your brain. So the simplest way to think about it is deep sleep, anabolic, stress, catabolic. If you completely repair 100%, and we know through like research with periodization and working out and so forth, like if you squat super heavy, like you're not going to repair 100% of your quad tissue that night. That's not going to happen. So again, we're being simplistic here, but the basic idea is you want to go to bed every night, wake up tomorrow completely recovered. When you're a kid, you do that, right? Kids can exhaust themselves, wake up the next day and they're bouncing off the walls with energy and nothing hurts anymore. And the cut that you saw them get last night is already gone. It's like that's perfect anabolic behavior. And we're capable of that. We aren't capable of it at the same level as kids because of hormonal changes and sensitivity to hormones, hormone receptors, senescent cells, like that gets complex. But essentially that's what aging is no longer, once you can't keep up with the damage every day, you're getting a little worse every day and you're getting older. That's what older means, right? You're not producing as much collagen, so your skin's starting to sag a little bit and you're starting to get a little bit of wrinkles. You're not producing as much melanin and your hair is starting to go a little bit gray, right? And these are all just physiological changes as you're getting older. So essentially, when you deprive yourself of sleep, you're accelerating aging. And that's why we know, and that makes it very clear as to why shift work is so hazardous to people's health and chronic sleep deprivation, whether you use sleep drugs or not. So this research really kind of came out and blew up in the face of sleep drugs, which I was happy for because I think sleep drugs are completely misused. But in some sense, it was a little unfair. So what it showed basically is that if you took sleep drugs chronically, which was defined as taking them every night for over 6 months, then you died on average about 12 years younger than people who didn't take sleep drugs regularly. But if you have chronic insomnia, you also die about 12 years younger. So is it just, these people were insomniacs and took drugs and these people are insomniacs and didn't take drugs, but both of them, neither one of them were getting enough sleep. And so that's why they died young, because they weren't repairing every day, right? They weren't repairing as fully every day. So that's the most simplistic version of hormones that I can give you. And we can nitpick about any one of those if you want to, but that's the gestalt.
That's awesome, Kirk. I never know how an interview is going to go because you guys know so much more than I do. And the way you said it was brilliant. I went into this thinking, okay, he's going to tell us all the things about testosterone, all the things about estrogen and so on. And the people listening probably the same. But the picture you painted of that catabolic person, to me, that's a mum.
Yeah, absolutely.
A new mum, and she is running on stress hormones. And like you said, where does that fuel come from? Because the SEALs have to get up the next day and do it, but so does a good mum. She's right. Get up the next day and get herself together. She's get that washing done, keep that baby alive, because it's useless for the first 2 years. It can't keep itself alive. It can't even right properly. And you've
and balance her emotions while she's doing it. I mean, it's the way society's set up. I mean, it's a travesty. It really is. I mean, we're supposed to be the smartest animal on the planet, and we've really destroyed our ability to take care of our young with the way we've, developed our economies and, the two parent working environment and hustling kids off to school and all that other stuff. It's like, obviously there's some advantages. We continue to grow as a society, but metabolically, to your point, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything more stressful. Well, the only thing more stressful than being a mom is being a mom that also has to work, like a full-time working mom. And then, everybody else's stress, is episodic for most part, right? It's like big things come and go, but it's like, no, this is a mom and like we had, my wife and I had 3 kids 2 years apart. So
that's me.
She was pregnant or or the mom of a toddler for 7 years, right? Like essentially no reprieve, because even if they're not actually responsible for the kid at that moment, I mean, I can go take care of it as dad. That doesn't shut mom's mind off, right? Like that's hormonally and like that's genetically embedded material for them to worry about the well-being of their offspring. Like that's what they do. And worrying increases stress hormones. And then ostensibly in society, we're supposed to be really, if we're really good parents, and then we make sure that our kids capitalize on every possible opportunity in their life. And so now we're running around to 15 different activities and making sure that they're straight A students and that they're in advanced placement courses. And, you're planning their college before they even get into preschool. And all of this, like that's added stress to the mom. It's added stress to the kid as well. But I mean, it's devastating. It really is. And you can see the difference in people. It's like watching the president of the United States, like comes into office like young and vigorous and then just comes out ashen gray, like gray hair, ashen, saggy face, exhausted looking. And that's 8 years. That's kind of like the same thing as having 3 kids. And you see that happen to women as well. But obviously the younger you are when you have children, the more resilient you are because the more anabolic hormones you have.
I think you nailed it there. But one of the things I love with working with clients is showing them that light at the end of the tunnel, showing a newish mum. I say ish because it can go from 2 years, having a 2-year-old up to having a 15-year-old. Showing them how to switch off that fight or flight response. So as you said, with heart math or using the box breathing, and then showing them how to sleep. And they realize that they can, because I'm a simplistic guy. I say to a newborn mum, or sorry, a mum who's had a newborn, when that baby was sleeping beside you, I bet you slept with one ear open, and all of them light up. They go, of course I did. They want to hear that baby's breathing. I say, so you're saying that you trained yourself for the first 6 months to be super vigilant, and then who detrained them? Who untrained that response?
Right.
To give them that ability to switch off that stress and then get the sleep. And we know when they're breastfeeding, doing the best they can with what they've got where they are. So using the light and using different things, but then getting their sleep on track, it's super important because they don't have to be that stressed out person for the rest of their life at all. And you painted the picture of the hard charging, high performance athlete / special forces operator / athlete. And then we've got that mum as well. Anybody that's experiencing those things, I get guys come to me the same sort of thing. They're highly stressed, they're not sleeping. And then you painted the picture of the people on sleep drugs. My last client's been on sleep drugs for 20 years. Can you said it, but I guess I'm just backing it up. I tell people that, those stages of sleep you talked about, those sort of 4 stages of sleep, the laying in bed sort of thinking about sleep, the sort of twitching away, and then the growth phases of sleep that you talked about, 3 and 4. Right. Is it true that both sleep drugs or alcohol, all they do is make you go unconscious? They don't allow you to sleep. They don't allow hearing growth.
Yeah. So this was my huge learning curve when I first started thinking about sleep as a possibility of impacting the SEALs. Was I was trying to learn what the hell happens when you sleep, and I didn't know, like nobody taught me anything. And medical school, I learned how to prescribe sleep drugs. That was it. And unfortunately, the pharmaceutical industry gets to do their own research, and then they get to cherry pick what they turn in to the FDA and say, hey, look how great our research turned out. And it wasn't until they started getting, sued for people essentially just being completely dissociated. And so they take a sleep drug and, then they get in their car and they drive to Vegas and they drain their bank account and gamble and whatever. And they just kind of wake up the next morning in their car and they're like, what happened? or, whatever, get prostitutes or go eat a bunch of donuts or like whatever, but they're not aware they're doing this. And so when I started looking at the research, I was like, all right, well, what's happening? That was really hard to come by. Once they started getting sued, a lot more of their data started coming out. So one thing to know is that even the best cherry picked data they had, I think taking a sleep drug would make you fall asleep 13 minutes faster, and it would lead to 36 minutes more sleep over the course of the entire night. Now that's just what they're defining as subjective sleep. So looking at somebody and they look like they're asleep, and then them reporting that they were asleep. If you actually go by what we call a hypnography or a hypnogram, which is the sleep study, right? So, or a polysomnograph. So when you measure people's heart rate and their respiratory rate and all their brain waves, you can figure out what stage of sleep they're in. Well, we know that alcohol destroys deep sleep, right? You lose about 80% of deep sleep with alcohol. When I first started looking into the literature, it was looking very convincing that sleep drugs destroyed 80% of deep sleep as well. I think it's not that severe. I think it's maybe 40%. But what sleep drugs really destroy a lot of is REM sleep, which I didn't talk about specifically, but basically when I was saying deep sleep is doing all this great stuff to your body and repairing and cleaning things out, REM sleep is really doing that with your brain. So REM sleep, that's when you're actually getting smarter. That's when you're emotionally categorizing. That's when you're thinking about stuff that you learned. That's when you're connecting the dots between stuff you've learned in the past and things that you recently learned. So REM is more like anabolic for the brain, and deep sleep is anabolic for the body and the organs, right? So when you take alcohol and sleep drugs, which is what all the SEALs are doing, right? Taking twice the recommended dosage of the sleep drugs and using a couple of cocktails to knock themselves out and then getting like 4 hours of sleep. Well, when I sent them in to get sleep studies, and so this is my own research, if you want to call that, my own clinical experience. I didn't have a single guy do a sleep study that had anything other than stage 2 sleep. They all came back 99% stage 2. So what's the real answer? The real answer is it's bad, really bad. That's the answer. It does a lot of, like, sleep drugs are really bad. All they do, they do a trick, right? So when I was saying earlier how everything's still working, but my brain is dissociating, right? I'm essentially ceasing to pay attention to my environment. By and large, that's done by GABA. GABA is a neuropeptide that makes it basically harder for the neurons in my brain to fire and sense things, hear things, smell things, taste things, feel things, right? And so what sleep drugs do is they take advantage of GABA doing that. And they say, well, if one's good, then 100 has to be better and 10,000 has to be even better. So now you have this one, you guys call it still NOx, right? So like you have this one still NOx molecule binds to a GABA receptor. And instead of doing one of what that would do if GABA bound to it, it does 1,000 or 10,000. So it really just completely shuts down your brain's awareness. That's why people can still be awake, but they have no memory of it because they're not forming any memories, because their brains essentially are not paying attention to their environment in any real sense. It's dissociated from the lizard brain, right? So that sort of the end of the brainstem that's kind of underneath that neocortex. And that part of our brain does like feeding and fornication. And like that's our fight or flight. Like that's our animal lizard brain, right? And that's why when people are on these sleep drugs and they dissociate, they do those types of hedonistic behaviors because that they do survival things, because that's what that part of the brain, the old brain, does. It's all about survival. So it does things that would enhance survival. So sleep drugs, really bad for sleep. Alcohol, really bad for sleep. If you're going to drink alcohol, you just drink it as far away from bedtime as possible. not to say you should wake up and drink first thing in the morning, but you get the drift, try to spread it out from here, and then make sure you hydrate, because, it is a toxin. It does get processed and get excreted out of your body. The more hydrated you are, the less impact it's going to have on you. But keep it in moderation and keep it, at least 2 or 3 hours from bedtime if you can. And you'll have less impact if it's something that you just really need. And there's, like, what I tell my clients all the time is, like, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And like there's just almost always something that's going to prevent you from being able to live the ideal lifestyle. And then some of that's just choice. It's like, well, I'm willing to give up a little bit of health or a little bit of longevity to have, my steak and wine every night, or like whatever your thing is. And I'm not here to judge that, but like that gap between the reality and ideal, that's where we supplement, right? That's where we do things like supplements, and we do things like gadgets, gadgetry and tricks and glasses and blue blocking and like all of that stuff. Like now we're trying to close that gap as much as possible with ancillary things that aren't exactly lifestyle changes.
Now, that's the next question I was going to ask you. Was, you've talked about hormones, you talked about what we're supposed to be achieving and what we aren't without that sleep. So without getting that correct amount of sleep, can you fix these things?
No.
Do you go to, okay, there we go. I mean, do you go to
simple, like, it's absolute no. Yep. You can't get better with inadequate sleep. Now you can gain efficiency with something like physical movement. You're right. So like if you're learning a skill, that skill is being solidified. Actually, that skill is being rehearsed during REM sleep. So if you're like learning to play a guitar, or throw a ball, or catch a ball, or hit a hockey puck, or whatever, your muscles, the reason you're paralyzed during REM sleep is because you're reenacting that. You're rehearsing that over and over again during your sleep. You're getting better at it while you're asleep. When you don't get enough sleep, you just simply don't get better at stuff like that. As we said, your tissues don't restore themselves in a way that makes them better able to do what you want them to do. And then there's the neurocognitive component of it. But there is a such thing as, like, say, if I put in my 10,000 hours of learning to throw a baseball or shoot a pistol, right? Something very skill related. Like I put in my 10,000 hours of marksmanship training and I'm not getting enough sleep. Well, I'm not getting better nearly as quickly as I should. However, I am getting some rote memorization. I am getting some neuromuscular coordination. So like, and sports are a great example. One of the things that makes you faster is being a lot stronger, right? Strength to the body weight ratio allows you to move a lever faster. However, it's also how many muscle fibers do you recruit at once and what order do you recruit them? So that's neuromuscular coordination. Now you can actually gain neuromuscular coordination during the day because that's like a learned behavior. So if let's say you're getting adequate REM sleep, you're not getting enough deep sleep, you're just not getting enough sleep overall, the neuromuscular coordination might allow you to get better for a while. You're not going to get it better nearly as quickly. And we've proven this by napping. If you just throw napping in between training sessions, you learn anything twice as fast. But yeah, I think that answers your question. Like, I don't want to prattle on too long.
The question you answered was no, you can't really get that without getting your proper sleep. But I'm sure everybody out there is thinking, my testosterone is low. Why don't I go get some testosterone replacement? My pregnenolone's progesterone's low as a female. Why don't I go and get a progesterone coach? My thyroid's not. You're not Hashimoto's. You're not hypothyroidic, but your thyroid's low, so I'll get these things. Those just seem to be piecemeal, sort of patching up. And as a doctor, maybe they prescribe those things as well, but what I'm getting at is without that sleep that what your body's supposed to do, as you said, that child recovering from that cut, from everything, that's just not going to get the same effect. So given that, you learned your craft with the SEALs, running the bloods, running how they present and their symptoms, sleep was the key. They're all on sleep drugs and using alcohol and sleep drugs to get that right. And I know we touched on the last one. How do you get them to sleep? That's what everybody's thinking here. How the hell do I achieve that when it has been so hard in the past?
Right. So what I always tell people is that the number one thing in getting good sleep is convincing yourself that you need sleep. Wow. Right. It's purely a value system. And I give it this metaphor. If let's say you believed me, I proved I had the resources, we drew up legal documents, and I proved that I had the intention and that this was a real offer. And I said, I'm going to give you $10 million if you can sleep 8 hours a night for 30 nights in a row without sleep drugs. How many people do you think would be able to do it?
It's interesting. It's really interesting. Yeah, that's difficult.
I would say damn near everybody would figure out how to do it, right? Because they would make it their number one priority. They would make it their number one priority. Now, there are people who have sleep disorders. That's a different thing. Like, we're not talking about sleep disorders. We're talking about lifestyle choices, right? So if you believe that sleep is the most important thing in the world and it's your number one priority, you don't need me. Like, you don't need this podcast. Like, you have Google, you have you can go buy books and whatever. You can learn anything you need to learn. But sleep is an innate activity, right? We learn how to do it. Definitely get with my assistant and include in your show notes a link. I have a PDF on that teaches people how to sleep when they're stressed, like how to decrease their stress around sleep time and how to manage that. It would take me 20 minutes or so to go through that. So it's probably unrealistic to do right now. But the first thing I tell people to do is just convince yourself that sleep's really important. And you can do this very simply. Just get your Google on. You just get on your computer. Before you get on your computer, just write down 10 things that are important to you, right? Like whatever. Physical performance, muscular, looking good, naked, being a good mom, being a good dad, making money, like whatever it is, whatever you value. I don't care what it is. Write down 10 things that you value. And then I want you to just go on something like Google Scholar or PubMed, some kind of real academic site. And you go sleep and that, and just read the research. You don't have to be able to understand it 100 times. You can just kind of skim it, look at the conclusion. But what you will find out is that every single thing that you value, sleep is critical in you getting it. The less sleep you get, the less likely you are to be whatever you want to be. If your idea in life is I want tomorrow, or at least I want to have a realistic shot of tomorrow being better than today, every single day of my life. Well, in order for that to happen, you have to sleep adequately. That's it. I mean, because what you mean by tomorrow being better is that the things that you value or the future you have envisioned yourself you're going to get closer to that tomorrow. You're going to be closer to that tomorrow. So that's your value system. So if you can convince yourself that, okay, sleep is now the most important thing in the world, it's super simple after that, right? All the sleep hygiene stuff is just basically think about your ancestors. What did your ancestors do? The sun went down, the light went out of their eyes, a bunch of chemical changes happened in their brain, and three hours later, they fell asleep. Why? Because there wasn't anything to do. They didn't have televisions. They weren't playing loud music. They weren't going and working out. They couldn't see very well at night. They were in danger at night. So they huddled around a fire. They huddled around in their cave or in their little hut or whatever. And then they eventually fell asleep because there was enough cognitive, enough changes in the neurochemistry that made them fall asleep. So it takes multiple hours really to get yourself ready for sleep. And you can apply that same logic, and something a little more familiar to people is just think about a bedtime routine for a child. You don't take a 2-year-old boy who's banging trucks together, making loud noises, screeching and rattling stuff around. You just take him, throw him in his bed, flip off the light and say, it's bedtime, go to sleep and walk out. That wouldn't work. We know that wouldn't work. Why doesn't that work? Because we didn't give them any chance to get ready for sleep. So we need the same thing that kids need, right? The reason we do what we do is because we're settling the brain down. We're trying to pay less attention to our environment. So we need to make the environment more calm. We need to dim the lights. We need to quit the rough play. You can do like soothing things. Now I'm going to give you a bath. I'm going to drop your body temperature a little bit because that's one of the cues for going to sleep. Of course, because our ancestors, when the sun went down, the temperature got lower and their body temperatures got lower. So that's one of the things that we've rehearsed over millennia to be a cue for going to sleep. So we put them in a bath and we decrease their body temperature a little bit. Then we put them in these super comfortable pajamas and we put powder all over them. Why? Well, we're decreasing all the sensation to their skin. Everything's like soft and smooth and there's nothing irritating about it. Now we put them in a bed. And we get them nice and comfortable and we bring them things that bring them comfort and make them feel safe, like their blanket or their toy or their stuffed animal or whatever. And then what do we read them? We don't read them War and Peace. We don't read them a horror story. We read them some story that they already know, that they've heard a million times. And why do they want to hear this a million times? They want to hear it because it's rhythmic and it's calming and it's soothing. And they're just like going over and over something that they don't really have to pay attention to it. It's sort of like people who distract themselves with television to fall asleep with that, or, they have an audiobook playing or a white noise machine or something. It's something to distract their brain. And then, you ease out of the room, the kid's like sedate and he's in kind of like the stage 1 phase, and you flip off the light and you assure him that he's going to be safe and everything's great. And I'm right next door and, daddy's here and I love you, and you give them a kiss and you walk out and they fall asleep. Well, adults need the same thing, right? And what does that take? It takes like 45 minutes to do that with a kid. How long do adults spend getting ready for bed? 5 minutes? Yeah, like a minute too. It's like they're on their computers banging away, like on Facebook, or they're finishing a work project, whatever. They brush their teeth, they get in bed and they turn off the lights, and they're like, they got into bed 45 minutes, an hour later than they thought they should. And then 5 minutes later, they're like, why am I not asleep? And they're looking at the clock and they're starting to calculate how much sleep they're going to get. And man, I'm going to be tired tomorrow. And I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have. Now they're building up their stress hormones. So that's what the PDF's all about, like how to handle that stress component of it. But it's really just behavioral. It's pretty simple, right? Light keeps us awake and stimulation keeps us awake. Decrease the stimulation and decrease the blue light. That's sleep hygiene. And then lower your body temperature a little bit. Make yourself an environment that is less likely to agitate you or cause you a bunch of sensation. If you have nettles in your bed, you don't sleep well. Why? Because you roll over on them and they hurt and your body responds. That's enough stimulation to bring you awake and be like, oh man, I got to get, but what most people don't know is your bed's a little too warm.
Yep.
Your body does the same thing. Oh, that's slightly uncomfortable. I got to find a cool spot in bed. So now you start moving around. Well, if you're in deep sleep and you start moving around to find a cooler spot in the bed, you're not in deep sleep anymore. Now you got to go back into deep sleep, right? Or, the bed can be too warm or the bed can be too hard or it can be too soft, right? So if the bed's too hard, you're cutting off circulation. And now you got to move to increase the circulation. You don't remember this. You don't actually wake up, but you come out of your deep sleep to move around to increase the circulation. So all of those things are pretty transparent, right? Like they're all pretty obvious if you just think through them logically. But if your bed's too soft, then your joints are extended in certain ways and it's causing you some joint pain. And then that joint pain may not wake you up all the way. So you have to have a good, comfortable bed. You have to have a low body temperature. You got to have low stimulation, and you got to have the blue light out of your eyes for, as close to 3 hours as possible, but even 30 minutes is better than nothing, right? So that's what the blue blocking glasses are about, the phone apps, the F-Lux, all of that stuff. And then if you do that, you go right into like a good deep sleep cycle. That's 90 to 120 minutes of anabolic activity. You're recovering. Like the more of those good sleep cycles you string together, the better off you're going to be the next day, the easier it's going to be to fall asleep the next night. It builds on itself like anything else. The problem with not getting enough sleep is, as I said, you wake up in a deficit. And what do you do you have to use more stress hormones. You become catabolic. But what prevents you from being able to go to sleep? Excess stress hormones. But you're relying on those excess stress hormones to get you through your day. So like now it's like the cure is causing the disease, and now we're into like some sort of addictive cycle, really.
So those people that you've just painted, my clients, I use your special forces sleep formula, or the sleep remedy that you developed for the SEALs. I use that as their kickstart to get them into that cycle. I use that as that shows them that beauty of that deep sleep.
Yeah.
So can we finish off on what goes into that sleep formula that you put together? I mean, it's amazing. I started a bunch of people on. I started a testosterone group the other day, and male and female, these people are loving it.
Yeah.
And they didn't have really problems with their sleep, but they're really maximizing it. So how does it work? How's it put together? And just talk to us about that to finish off.
Yeah. So if I go back to the earlier example of our ancestors, right? So when the sun went down, the light was gone. They did whatever they did to keep themselves in a protected environment. Of course, knowing by the time they're, 10 or something, knowing that they're going to fall asleep soon, they would have been planning for that. But essentially, the first thing that is a hormone. People have heard it. Everybody's heard of melatonin. That's a hormone that's secreted, but that's secreted, and essentially that's the initiation hormone is melatonin, and the initiation of producing melatonin is caused by the lack of blue light, right? So it's kind of a circuitous pathway, and there's a lot involved in there. But the simplistic way of saying is like you take the blue light out of your eyes, and then sometime later, minutes later for sure, maybe up to an hour later, you're going to start secreting melatonin. Now, you're not going to secrete like this huge bolus of it and it's going to knock you out. That's not how it works. Like melatonin starts to change the chemistry of all the cells that it touches. And then those cells start behaving in a different way. And then you produce this thing that's, as I was talking about earlier, this peptide called gamma aminobutyric acid. That's a neuropeptide that, as I was saying, like makes you pay less attention to your environment. It makes your neocortex harder to stimulate. And there's hundreds of chemical changes going on. And if you look at, like, we've studied hunter-gatherers, and by we, I mean the royal we, I didn't actually do it, but researchers have studied hunter-gatherers that still alive, that still live today, just like our ancestors did millennia ago. They've never been exposed to electricity, nothing. Like they eat what they kill, they eat roots, they dig up roots, they kill animals. That's all they do is they feed themselves and they sleep. They feed themselves and they sleep, and they reproduce, and that's what they do. When you look at those people, and they studied these people, and they even did like actigraphy watches and tried to figure out how much they slept and how much they moved and what times did they fall asleep and what times they wake up and body temperature and all this other stuff. And it fell in line with what everybody assumed to be true, because people have been camping and so forth. And we know that what happens when you go camping, it's kind of the same thing. So it took about 3 hours of changes, right? So 3 hours after the sun went down, before the first person fell asleep. That was the average across 9 different hunter-gatherer tribes all around the world. It's 3 to 3.5 hours. So we don't spend 3 to 3.5 hours getting ready for sleep. So the whole idea of my sleep supplement was to say, okay, if you're not going to spend 3.5 hours, we know that there's a bunch of chemical changes should have happened. Some of them may have happened, some of them may not have happened, because your circadian rhythm dictates some of that. So some things are happening, some things aren't happening. But let's put all the nutritional resources in you that you need if those things are going to happen, right? So I'm bringing lumber to the construction side. I'm not bringing any construction crew members. I'm not doing any work. It's like I'm just bringing the resources in and parking them in your brain. And so what it is the production pathway for melatonin, right? So melatonin, again, that's the starter pistol. It's initiating the cascades of stuff. Well, in America, we have Thanksgiving, people overeat turkey. And when they overeat turkey, they fall asleep on the couch. We call that the tryptophan coma, the tryptophan nap, whatever. So we know that meat has a lot of amino acid called tryptophan in it. Tryptophan becomes 5-hydroxytryptophan. Then with the help of vitamin D3 and magnesium, 5-hydroxytryptophan becomes serotonin. Serotonin then can become melatonin, and then melatonin does its initiation cascades. One of the things that it produces is GABA, like I said, but you produce melatonin all throughout the night, right? You don't quit producing melatonin until your cortisol levels get high enough to wake you up in the morning. So you're producing melatonin throughout the whole night. So I don't want to give you so much melatonin that your brain quits producing melatonin, right? Or you decrease your sensitivity to melatonin. So it's just a very, very, very small initiation dose of that. Then all the resources in your brain for you to make more, put some GABA in there to do the work of the GABA that should be, plentiful in your bloodstream, which probably isn't yet. L-theanine, which helps GABA do its work. It makes GABA work about 30% better. This is, again, a normal amino acid. And then in the new formulation, I put something called phosphatidylserine in there, which actually lowers cortisol. So it lowers the amount of stress hormones in your bloodstream and therefore in your brain. And that's it. So all I'm really kind of doing is like trying to set the stage for your brain to do what should be done. And then hopefully your body takes over and does everything well and you get good sleep. And then, like I said, good sleep builds good sleep. Every night that you sleep well, it gets that much easier to sleep better the next night. And, something I think we talked about last time is like your sense of awareness, your self-awareness when you're sleep deprived is terrible. Like you think you're doing fine. Like you sleep 6 hours a night every night for years and you think I'm doing just fine. Like I feel fine. I feel normal. It isn't until you get really good sleep that you're like, holy smokes, I really felt like crap. And I didn't even know I felt like crap. And so that, it takes a while to kind of build up on that. And what happened to me with the SEALs is when I got them off the sleep drugs, with exactly what I'm just telling you. I didn't have a product yet. They were having to go out and buy every ingredient individually. And I gave them a handout with like every ingredient and how much they needed to take and which stores that I knew around the island that had it and what brand to get. And they would just go out and buy it all. And it was a pain in the butt. So they harangued me into making a product out of it. And that's why it became a product. It was never meant to be a business. It just kind of turned out to be more successful than I thought it was going to be. I was really making it to get them off my back. And so like the whole idea is just like bring all those resources in there, put them in there, but you have to do all of the behavioral stuff to get ready for sleep. And then the reason I put it in the powder to be able to mix in the drink was twofold really. One, it was so that, guys could cram a handful of them in their cargo pocket and, not have to worry about packing around bottles or boxes or whatever, like a single individual serving, and that foil packet is waterproof and whatever. And so like it was a rugged way for these guys to be able to travel with it really easily. But the other thing is that I want to create some type of bedtime routine. Yes. As an adult, you need some sort of bedtime routine, just like a kid does. And if you know that you're going to boil some water and put this in a mug and like have like some nice hot, nighttime drink, there's at least 10 minutes involved in doing, like thinking through that, doing it and putting stuff away. So now you've created some bedtime routine at least. And, hopefully that encourages you to build out more onto, sleep hygiene. And so that's why I did that way. Unfortunately, because of the way the world works, the capsules are really selling a lot better than the tea now, but what can I do?
Man, I'm just going to say thank you for what you've done there. To give you a couple of examples, real world examples, real time. One of my clients, 20 years sleeping pills, veterinarian, so high stressed. I don't know if people out there know veterinarians. Sorry, Kirk, they're really smart doctors because the patients don't get much feedback, but stress, man, because they're putting the pets down. And she, after 4 or 5 days of doing some sleep hygiene stuff, she had her first night without sleep drugs using your sleep remedy.
Oh, right on.
and she, being stressed, busy, all these things, she didn't want the tea, but I made her have the tea. I didn't have a choice because I knew she needed the routine.
Right.
My 67-year-old male that I'll be that I'm starting with, he's on his first week. He'll be having the tea because he needs the routine. But then some other people just use the capsules because they've got all those other routine stuff going. Hey, we'll just pop these. So it gives them diversity. But yeah, you're changing people's lives with what you've done there. You know, this woman hasn't slept properly for 20 years. So
yeah, that's always inspiring. It's great to hear. I mean, I continue to, you know, it's I don't know what the right word is for it, but I guess it's humbling because it continues to surprise me. I mean, I've been hearing these great stories for 5 years, and then I hear another story and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I mean, what I'm doing actually is making a difference, right? I like it. It's not just out hustling and making a product and making a buck. It's like, this is actually working, man. So, yeah. So thanks for the feedback. That matters a lot. And, I know a lot of Australians hear me on podcast or see me on whatever kind of media. They always go, "Hey, can you get your product in Australia?" I'm like, I don't ship to Australia, but there's a guy there who you should contact. So I don't know how I should be telling him to contact you, but that's what I do. I give him your name and say, "Look this dude up." So,
and thank you so much. And you know, you're such a wealth of information. I think I just saw that I made you lost for words there with that feedback. So that was, yeah, that's a marker of humility. And for people that don't know, in the Special Forces, one of the tenets we have is humility. So you display that in your everyday life, man.
yeah.
Thank you so much for all the information here. And yeah, I didn't know where it was going to go. You've really summed up. I love you're like me, noble. You can't fix hormones without your sleep. You know, injections, all these things aren't going to cut it. For those that are listening,
Yeah, and if you want to do a separate one and just talk about hormone replacement therapy, like, I'm more than happy to come back on and do that and tell you everything I know about that. I've been doing that for 15 years or so as well. So I'm pretty well versed in that. I feel pretty confident I could add some value if you wanted to just chat through what people are doing and what they actually should be doing and why and when. I know you asked that earlier and I never really got around to answering it, but the short answer is if you can get away without doing hormone replacement therapy, you should, for as long as you can. Because once you start relying upon hormone replacement therapy, then you're reliant upon it. And you decrease your own production. And then if you ever quit using hormones, you're worse off than when you met me. You know, which that feels bad. But if we can get you a lot better with lifestyle and supplementation and stuff, if you ever quit that, you're still going to be better off than when you met me. So
yeah, awesome. I'd love to do that. That'd be great because I know there'd be a lot of people interested. So for those listening, how do they contact you so we can get it on voice?
Yeah, just my website, doc parsley, like the herb, docparsley.com.
Easy, docparsley.com. I'm going to contact your assistant and I'll get that PDF here for the show notes. Thank you so much for your time, Kirk. It's been amazing. It's always great to chat to you, and I hope people got something out of it.
Yeah, I hope people got something out of it too. It wasn't just me blathering.
You're awesome, man.
Always a joy to come on your show, man. You're a great guy. You're doing great work.
Thanks, Kirk. That's awesome. All right, man.
All right.